come up for a story this morning? Maybe, maybe not.
Are you gonna go?
Sorry, what were you doing, Rayanne?
They're cutting out their butterflies.
Oh, cutting out butterflies.
Bring them along.
Well, you can bring them with you. How are you, Catherine? Are you good? That's good. Hi, Theo. I hear you were in Vancouver. Was that okay? Oh, good. Hi, Freya. Do you eat Cheerios every day?
She always.
Not you. Do you prefer cornflakes? No. I know, Fruit Loops. Right?
No.
Well, it's the time again to open the box with the most important story there is in our world. Remember what this is? No? Do you remember now? This is a story that every single one of us is part of. We can't escape it. Some stories you can say, oh, that's about somebody else. Not this one. This one is about all of us. And it started, we don't really know. Because I think there was something before the time we know. But that's a philosophical question for another day. What we do know is that this story, as we tell it, began with a bang! Way, way louder than what I just did. And in one moment, in one tiny little moment, everything exploded with such force and with so much light that it was beyond anything we could ever imagine. And in that moment was everything that we would need to create life. And so galaxies were formed. Galaxies with millions and trillions and gazillions and super gazillions of stars. And all these stars would carry everything that's needed for life as we know it. And one star in particular was our sun.
I guess that's the sun.
And our sun would be the source of heat and light that would be important for us here. And around that sun, there was originally this very, very hot, very soft, molten ball. Hi. That would become our planet that we live on. But originally it was just a big, hot, molten thing. And a meteor at one point slammed into that hot, molten thing, and a bit of it flew off, and it became our moon. And started doing an orbit around the bigger planet Earth.
Didn't that big piece of the thing turn into
It might have. It might have, yeah. Well, as this ball of molten stuff started to cool, it caused condensation and it began to rain. And so we had rain, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And eventually it rained so much that the whole surface was covered with water, great seas everywhere. Everywhere was all this water. And in this water, little tiny things bacteria and things started to grow that created the very first bits of life. And over time, they grew into things like jellyfish and other creatures that had... Do you like those? Yeah, they're pretty cool. Some of them are good to eat, too. And also fish started to form, the first kinds of fish. And eventually, some of the water started to recede and land appeared, and the first plants, fungus and algae and little tiny plants started to grow on the soil. And seaweed, you're right, seaweed. And that meant that things like frogs and salamanders and lizards could also grow.
We have a pond that has salamanders.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow, neat. And at the same time, insects started to develop too, and the first things that could fly, including mosquitoes, which have lived to this very day. And then the land began to support bigger things than just seaweed and fungus, and trees started to grow, huge, massive trees. And of course, with all this food to eat, these big trees, we started to get bigger creatures, and we had the time of dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs lived all over the land, and they also were huge creatures in the sea. Massive creatures, bigger than this room, lived in the sea. And then another meteor struck the earth, like the one that caused the moon to be formed. And this one was so big and so powerful that it killed almost everything that lived on the earth. They say up to 99% of all of life was destroyed. But things like turtles that could burrow under the sand or lived in the sea,
So
they lived, and other little creatures like mice and moles and rabbits, all those kind of little tiny creatures that could burrow into the ground, they were able to survive. And there were tiny little horses. In this next time in our story, horses were like this tall.
Wow.
Imagine. You sure couldn't ride them, but you could carry them in your arms.
But babies could ride them.
Babies could ride them, yeah. And so these creatures started, as the earth recovered, started to get bigger and bigger, and pretty soon there were all kinds of larger animals, including what we call the primates, the monkeys and the chimpanzees and the orangutans and the gorillas, and they all started to live in the trees. And the land became covered with grasses and flowers, all kinds of diverse things. And it was the grasses that allowed some of the monkeys to come down out of the trees and walk on 2 feet. And we are those ones. We learned how to walk on 2 feet. And then we learned how to keep and create fire. And that allowed us to stay in one place, to be able to keep warm, to be able to cook our foods. And as we were able to stay in one place, we started to take some of the wild animals and make them our friends. So dogs and cats and horses, which would help us to grow food. And as we could grow more food, we could start living in towns and villages instead of on our own. And so cities and villages and towns grew everywhere. And that kept happening and happening for thousands of years until we came to, well, about 60 years ago, when I was born on this planet. And then to today, well, not today when you were born, but today when we're all here together as part of this amazing story. And what's left for us is the question, I wonder what tomorrow will be. And this is our most important story, to know that we are part of this amazing universe.
Theo.
So,
Theo.
I want to teach you a song, which we're going to be doing for a few weeks, and it would probably be helpful to have a few adults to join us, because we need to form a circle to do this. So, anyone who's willing to sing with me in this song, if you want to come up. Thanks, Rayanne. Anyone else?